Hello, welcome to Deep Dive. I'm Kevin Benedict, your program host, and I want to thank all of you guys for joining us today. Today I'm just excited to have Ryan Hollenbeck with us, and Ryan is the SVP of Global Marketing here at Verint. Thanks for joining us, Ryan.
Thanks very much for having me, Kevin.
So before we get started in talking about all your insights and your thoughts and your views on the future, let's just talk a little bit about you, Ryan.
Okay.
Tell us about yourself.
All right, so I'm Ryan Hollenbeck, and I'm here in the Atlanta office for Verint. We're a big global software company. For me, I'm originally from the Bay Area. I was born and raised in San Jose, California, and I've been in the tech industry really my whole life. And happened to come to Atlanta a number of years ago, and was fortunate enough to become part of the Verint team pretty early on, and it's been a lot of fun and a wild ride.
All right. So Ryan, for those of you out there and our audience out there that may not be familiar with Verint, Verint has this kind of byline, is the customer engagement company.
That's right.
What do you guys mean? Because that covers a big space.
Yeah.
What do you mean by customer engagement?
Yeah, I mean, when a lot of people think of customer engagement, they tend to first think about a contact center, and that's true. We're in call centers all over the world, and we provide not only the technology that helps them literally engage with customers, things like email and web chat and web self-service and phone call interactions and all of that, but we're also sort of an automation company that sits across the methodology that they use to engage.
Okay.
So we have, people often hear this call may be monitored for quality purposes. Yes. That's certainly us, but we also do performance management, we do workforce management and scheduling, we have mobile technology, robotic process automation, all forms of artificial intelligence that sort of help organizations manage this ongoing dilemma, if you will, between humans and robots. And what's the right combination of things to make sure you're delivering a great customer experience, but you're also being mindful of operational efficiency.
Absolutely. I've had the privilege of actually going into call centers and sitting out with the headsets on and listening. And, oh man, I have a newfound understanding and appreciation for how hard that can be.
I don't think people really realize how much pressure and how much responsibility that they're putting on that frontline agent who's interacting with customers. And more people actually prefer self-service channels, and Verint has a whole portfolio of self-service technology, not just web self-service, but voice self-service and all sorts of other ways that you can interact in that way. But that agent that you're talking about, that human that people need at certain times, especially with more complex interactions, is absolutely not going away, and it's a huge responsibility for a lot of organizations.
So Ryan, talk to me a little bit about how you've seen maybe over the last 5 years call centers kind of evolve because of all this new technology.
Yeah, I mean, there's this whole hybrid workforce emerging. It's changed really fundamentally from what it used to be, which was a big room and maybe an old hidden away former warehouse somewhere with 1,000 people in it taking nothing but phone calls. And now it's fundamentally changed where you've got a mix of automation and self-service happening, as well as where needed, that human interaction that still is very critical, especially for the more complex types of interactions.
So I imagine with all of your actionable analytics and things like that we read about from Verint, there must be all kinds of ways of using machine learning and pattern recognition to try to make each call a little bit easier on the person.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, a lot of what most organizations are trying to do today is to be able to create a more personalized experience. And so the Verint technology is often used to help those agents understand what kind of knowledge they need, how can they understand the history and the context of the person that they're communicating with, and serve that all up to them on a single desktop that's really easy for them to use. And it solves a big pain point historically in a call center where you had 8 different screens and 17 different applications, and it's really a confusing place to be. And as a result, there's a lot of these awkward pauses when people call a call center, and now that's kind of fundamentally changing, and we'd like to think that we're an important part of it.
Oh, that's great. So have you guys been able to employ things like chatbots and other ways of surveying the problem even before it comes to the human on the call center?
Yeah, I mean, for us, and in fact, just recently, we acquired interactive, voice capability, and that interactive virtual assistant, if you will, really can be so important. People don't think of it this way, but it really actually provides a better customer experience. You can very quickly click on an icon, the virtual assistant pulls up, you start to have some dialogue and interaction with this virtual assistant. You may not even know it because the complex algorithms behind the scenes that enable us to actually respond to fairly complex questions is really important, but then there can be a soft handoff to the human at just the right moment. So that's a big part of what we do. Yeah, it's cool.
That's terrific, and I've been on the other end of that, and there's a huge advantage, because one thing you don't want to do is have to repeat yourself 100 times.
No, it's so frustrating when you have to do that over and over, and that's a big part of what I think you can solve with the right combination of technology.
Yeah, so Ryan, you talked about self-serve and how that's increasingly popular.
Yep.
That must also be the result of changing customer expectations for what they expect from you.
Yeah.
And they have their own technology that they use every day. So when they call, they expect you guys to be on the ball with that too. So talk to me about how you've seen those customer expectations actually change over time.
Yeah, it's a different world, isn't it? I mean, the expectations that you have today are really set by some of the leaders out there. We think of Apple and Amazon and some of the best in the world at providing really timely, exceptional service with the right combination of self-service and assisted service. And that expectation, regardless of what industry you're in, it doesn't matter if you're in healthcare or telecommunications or the tech industry like we are, it sets this really, really high bar. And so what we're seeing with a lot of our customers is that they're being held to that kind of standard. And so more and more, not only do they want to strike this balance between customer experience and operational efficiency, but they also want to try to achieve that type of milestone in customer experience. And it's non-trivial, it's not easy.
So you're in charge of a lot of the marketing that goes on here. Talk to me about why people actually call you guys. What problems are they really trying to solve? I know you guys have a lot of products, so it's going to be a hard question. But what are some of the common ones? Let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually, at a top line, it's usually one of four things. I mean, they usually call us because they're trying to find ways to be more operationally efficient. And that gets back to this balance between customer experience and operational efficiency. So that's a big one. A second one that's pretty common for us is people are contacting us because they're trying to up their game in customer experience. And they want to understand the voice of the customer better through surveys, through speech analytics, through text, all kinds of different modes. And they tend to come to Verint to try to get some help with that. A third one would be things related to fraud and risk and compliance. If you're trying to comply with some of these new regulations like GDPR or PCI, and Verint has encryption and other technology that can help them with that. And then probably the fourth would be finding new ways to uncover revenue. Because remember, in a call center and even on a web self-service environment, you're not only trying to provide good service, you're often also trying to find new outbound ways to uncover revenue opportunities, and we can help with that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Now let's replace that hat, with your expert in Verint, with your expert in market. And let's talk about, over the last 5-10 years, Ryan, what have you seen change in marketing strategies kind of as an industry and as a process of marketing?
Well, I've found that, in my experience that, marketing's really kind of fundamentally changed over the years, hasn't it? I mean, it's a completely different industry than it used to be, at least as it relates to where we spend most of our time, which is B2B marketing.
Yes.
I mean, it used to be that, there was more of a thought leadership approach only. And it's not that that's gone away, that's still critical, but technology is so much a part of how we do things today. If you think about all of us that are running marketing organizations and what our tech stack looks like today compared to what it was 10 years ago, it's very complex, and we've got our own own, not only do we have our own vice president of sales enablement that's part of our team, but we also have our own vice president of marketing operations that's part of our team, and they're looking at all sorts of different technology to sort of fit our tech stack so that we can not only help enable our sales force effectively and not only drive market awareness, but also develop a consistent pipeline to help out our global sales organization.
Oh yeah, so there's mass quantities of data that are available to us now. And that's what all this technology does, right? Yeah. It allows us to use that data in a predictive way to understand our customers better.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what you would see as kind of the basics of what everyone would need today. That's any company that's of substantial size.
Right.
What kind of MarTech stack would they need?
Yeah, I think at a minimum you've got to start with that interaction point between your Salesforce automation system and your marketing automation system. For us, that's Salesforce.com and Eloqua, but that's a minimum point because you need to start to understand how are sales and marketing working effectively together in order to cultivate the market. Yeah. And a lot of that comes down to understanding where what is your sphere of influence, not only within an account, how many people are participating in your campaigns, how are you moving people through a funnel, how are they better understanding what the value prop of your organization is, and then ultimately, can you compress and make it simpler for sellers to close business? Yes. And that's a big part of what the foundational elements are for me. But I think there's a lot of other things, recently that we've deployed that have really made a big difference for our sellers as well. We just, we use a number of startup type technologies as well. We deployed a piece of software called Turtle that gives us a more interactive storytelling methodology. That's a big part of our stack now. And then another piece of technology called SalesTing that really helps us understand how marketing assets are being used by our sellers, not only directly from the customer from a website, for example, but how our sellers are actually communicating with customers and prospects using marketing assets.
Absolutely. And one of the trends I hear about all the time when I'm talking to marketers out there is personalization and contextual relevance. So if you're going to prepare content for a prospect out there, you want to personalize it. So it's not just a generic one. You know something about them, so the content they're getting is going to be useful.
Yeah, that's right.
But how do you guys handle that?
Well, it seems like everybody's talking about account-based marketing these days. It's not necessarily a new thing, but there is more focus in and around this concept that you're talking about, Kevin, of personalization. I think it's critical. And for us, especially with what we call our strategic accounts, our key accounts, these are organizations that have invested a lot of money in partnering with the Verint company, and it's really important that we understand what their business challenges are, and not only do our interviewing for discovery early on and figuring out what those challenges are, but also in an automated fashion really understand what are they looking for and what are they trying to achieve so that we can be more responsive to them.
Oh, that's incredibly interesting. So when there's changing expectations, there's a desire for personalized content, that must impact your need to produce content that is personalized. Yeah. How are you guys gone about that?
Yeah, it does.
So the content isn't generic. It is actually related to what the person's experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, for us, this is a big part of our digital marketing effort. I mean, we really think that, I mentioned this organization that we partner with called Turtle earlier. They help us create these interactive storyboards that can be personalized down to the individual level or the company level, or even just like an industry level. And so it enables you to interact with surveys that are embedded, with videos that are embedded, and where the consumer of the content is actually interacting a little bit more with it, rather than just like reading a static PDF. So that's one way. But I also think social channels are really important here as well. You can see where people are interacting through social channels, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter or some other medium, and how can you make sure that you're serving up information that's relevant to them?
Very interesting. So we've talked about content from your perspective as a leader within a large company. How are you seeing consumers, their consumption of content change? Did they used to do something but they don't do it now? Have they moved to social? Have they moved to video? Have they stopped reading long form reports? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is trying to get at the capability to see things in a much smaller, more consumable, more automated way. Long form videos just don't really work anymore. We're finding that even when we record a webinar that might last 45 minutes or so, the request afterward isn't always just for the actual webinar to see it in a recorded format, but rather, how can I just get the 8 minutes that really mattered out of this thing? And what can you do to just send me the cliff notes, if you will, like we used to say? And so I think there's a real need for highlighted, sort of parsed information directly back as a follow-up.
That's so interesting, because on Regalix TV, we've just taken, where we interview thought leaders like yourself, Ryan, we take the video and we always break it down into 3 key points. And so that if they want to jump to that part of the video, they can jump straight into there. And they can skip all of the really cool stuff that I say and just jump into what you say.
I think that's exactly what people want, really. And I think more people want video, A, and then B, they want maybe not the entire thing, or maybe they'll go to that later, but first, what's just the net?
Let's just jump into it. So let's talk about emerging technologies in general. There's, a whole bucket full, like AI. So artificial intelligence, there's machine learning, there's really pattern recognition, there's voice to digital, there's real-time support for, like, in call centers, where you have AI kind of listening in and offering support and advice and things like that. Talk to me about how you guys are really seeing the use of that internally here at Verint.
Well, I mean, first of all, like we talked about earlier, artificial intelligence and machine learning, these things, automation, if you will, is a big theme and a big part of what Verint does from a customer experience or customer service standpoint for our own organizations. But you're right in saying that internally, we're also very focused on it. I mentioned this this startup that we work with called Sales Ting. They're one good example where they have a piece of technology that really helps us better understand in an automated fashion exactly what's happening with our assets and where they're being consumed, which was an enormous manual effort for us before. So that's just one example, really. But we're also finding things where we can look at automated dashboards that can help us get a view to campaign effectiveness and understand how well we're doing with our market engagement methodology over the course of a year. That's another example that we're seeing. So I think maybe one last example to share is just being able to automate some of the things that happen in our digital properties. So what we're doing on the web, what we're doing in social channels, and actually serving up information in an automated fashion and starting to have more interactions early on that we can finish off as a marketing team.
So Ryan, do you remember the days a long time ago when if you were the best creative mind, you could run marketing? Now it seems like it's all about analytics, doesn't it?
You're right. It's changed a lot, hasn't it? I mean, I think creativity is still critical, and when you think about something like a brand refresh, which requires a lot of creativity, it's actually very correlated to the analytics mind that's needed. But even if you think about my own marketing staff, it used to be that it was much more weighted towards creativity, and we still have some awesome creative people on the team, but more and more, a lot of the team is actual analytics and people that really understand data science.
Oh, absolutely. So now we take off that hat and put on your fortune-telling hat.
Okay.
Ryan, where do you think, with all this stuff, all these cards on the table and all these technologies we're all evolving with, you must have a roadmap that says, okay, we're barely scraping the surface, What we really want to do is this. So tell me, we look 5 years out, how's marketing going to be done different?
Well, things change so quickly in tech and especially in marketing that, it's a challenge for all of us to say. But, I really think this theme of automation that we're on right now and using data more for decision making is something that's not going away. It's going to become even more intense.
Okay.
And that's tricky for all of us as marketers because, we're going to become, things are going to flip internally within our organizations where people are going to rely on us more and more, not just for the simple things like web analytics, but really all the analytical information about our actual customers, what's happening with the customer experience. You mentioned earlier this personalization idea down to the individual level. So we're going to be asked to not only understand macro markets and not only understand market convergence, but be able to get all the way down into that individual level and understand what's different about Kevin.
Yes.
And is he more or less likely to become somebody who's going to be more or less engaged with us over time. And that just reeks of automation and artificial intelligence, and having the ability to create all these analytics first. But I still think there's going to be that human side of marketing, where we're going to be able to turn that into something that people really want to see. I think we all still appreciate a great customer experience, and some of that really is the human interaction.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the human component of that as kind of wrapping up our conversation today, Ryan. Influencers in the B2B space. Mm-hmm. Do you guys engage in kind of influencer marketing, or have an focus on using influencers? And how has that changed with all this new technology?
Yeah, well, so yes, we do. And there's a number of different influencers that we interact with that are unique to different parts of the market, like, for example, financial compliance, contact centers or call centers, like we've talked about earlier, marketing thought leaders, all sorts of different thought leaders, and some of the big industry analysts like Gartner and Forrester, but also there's some really interesting boutique thought leaders, Confusion, Saddletree Research, and some that sit in between that are, the likes of an Ovum and these folks, and 451 Group is another one. A lot of these folks have really interesting research that's very targeted in a different sort of way that we can partner with. But I think what's going to happen over time is it's going to be a much more automated thing. So their research and what Verint's doing can be activated in conjunction in a way that's consumable for somebody on their mobile device while they're on the go, as opposed to have to sit down at a conference or listen to a long webinar.
And with all this massive volume of data moving through our pipes all the time, being able to plug into that data is going to give us a lot of information a lot quicker than we had in the past.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think also trying to get to the snippets or the subsets of that research that really matter to me or to you or us individually or as a group. Small work group, if you will, without having to right away read or listen to the entire piece of research or thought leadership.
Absolutely. Ryan, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank all of you out there for sticking with us and watching today. Thank you.
Thank you.